Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are located. This is our second episode, and we have here today Shahid Hussain, the CEO of Green Proposition, and our special guest, Dr. WANG Yiwei. He is the Vice President of the Academy of Xi Jinping Thought on Socialism with Chinese Characteristics for a New Era. And he is the Jean Monnet Chair Professor, Director of Institute of International Affairs at Renmin University. Dr. Wang, Shahid, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for introduction. Dr. Wang, thank you for your time. And we will have a 10-minute presentation from Dr. Wang. Then we will have a mutual discussion about different topics related to China, geopolitics, and the present scenario in the US and China and Europe in a way that how we can try to have a middle ground to solve those crises. Dr. Wang, you can go ahead.
Yes, so
thank you,
Dr. Wang, thank you so much. You can start.
Thank you for the invitation, and we're very pleased to share my thoughts on the Communist Party's role in Chinese modernization. In China, we have that kind of logic that the party found the country. So Communist Party was founded in 1921. And the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949. So maybe different with other countries' logic. Many countries, like you have the independent from the maybe some European colonial period, and then founded many parties. And then in China is opposite. So the party created the nation, not that the nation created the parties. So that's very important. And after the People's Republic of China was founded, the party solved the two basic problems. The first one is united the whole country. Before People's Republic of China, it's a Republic of China, it's a Chiang Kai-shek Kuomintang, a Nationalist Party of China. But China actually was divided, not fully united. There are many war laws in different provinces and different regions that cannot unite each other. That's the reason with 3 years, the People's Liberation Army defeated the Kuomintang's army, which actually armed by the US, it's nearly 5 million. And the Communist Party, the army, People's Liberation Army, is less than 2 million. But in half a year, fully defeated nationalist party's troops, let the Kuomintang moved from the mainland to Taiwan. So that's the reason we have a Taiwan problem now. So the Communist Party united the whole country. And then 56 ethnic groups was united under the leadership of the Communist Party. So if you see the Chinese national flag, these are the 4 stars around the one star. The biggest one, of course, is Communist Party. The first one is the working class. Second one is the farmers. The third one is the Liberation Army. The fourth one is the intellectual. So the 4 stars around the big stars. So that's our national flag of the People's Republic of China, which is very different with like a French national flag. There's 3 colors, right? The blue, the white, and then the red. They are separate. We are surrounded in a Chinese philosopher like An Luozi from the Hawaii University, who described this as the one unseparable from many. So it's different philosopher. So first, they united the whole nation and then mobilized the people to work for industrialization. For instance, as I'm visiting Daqing, as I mentioned to you, the first oil dig 1959. There's a hero called Wang Yiwei. The slogan is, even I will live 20 years without the 20 years life, I will devote, sacrifice 20 years life for the oil exploring. So that's reason that during that time, the farmers they gave the cotton, coins, everything in a very cheap price to the government. And the government used the farmers, these products, to support industrialization. So that's the reason national community was established to build our satellite, nuclear weapons, and then independence. So the first role for Communist Party contribute to the national modernization is united the whole nations and the people, educated the people. And the second role, I think, is independence. Before the People's Republic of China, China was a semi-colonized, semi-feudalist system. The different Western imperialists during that time, we say, including United States and later Soviet Union, they have the special rights in China. If you visit Shanghai, they have the concession period. The Western banks and the Western customs that do not pay tax for Chinese government. Chinese sovereignty was actually transferred to the imperialists and colonists. So Communist Party, when took power, and they declared all the imperialist period, and including Kuomintang and Qing dynasty, all the treaty they signed is illegal. We are not recognized. We were overthrow over the three mountains, we say, the feudalism, imperialism, and under the hegemonic influence. And then there's a Yalta conference, when Stalin agreed to send an army to liberate from the Japanese aggression in Manchuria. Stalin actually asked the privileges. For instance, they used access to the Chinese Dalian and the Lushen port, and also railway, and even Japanese privileges, special rights in the Manchuria, which should give from Japan to Soviet Union. So Mao disliked Stalin at the beginning, but leaned to Soviet Union because China was surrounded and isolated by the American-led the West Bloc. And then the Korean War broke out, used the UN 19 nations army. So China sent the volunteer army to North Korea, and then defeated the American-led UN army. And then Stalin returned all these so-called special rights, sovereignty to Communist Party. Otherwise, the Soviet Union replaced Japan, have the special rights, and the Chinese sovereignty will not be independent. So independence is very crucial for the Communist Party. The third role for the Communist Party play in China actually is building the infrastructure. For instance, in 1969, we had the border conflict, the war with Soviet Union. Actually, China defeated the Soviet Union troops in the Zhenbao Dao, it's Heilongjiang, it's close to the Soviet Union bloc. During that time, the Soviet Union had 1 million troops, and China also 1 million. So it's very dangerous. When Soviet Union was defeated, they wanted to use nuclear weapons to China, target 20 to 30 cities, including Beijing and Shanghai, big cities, want to destroy it. And Mao made a very important decision. Even 1969, we have the nuclear weapons already, but our nuclear weapons cannot drop to Moscow, only into Serbia, without enough people. So the deterrence to Soviet Union is not enough. And then we should separate our leaders from Beijing to other cities, and also build tuners and tuners and to protect the people. and move the factories from the coastal area to landlocked inland areas. This is called the three lines construction, because we worry about the nuclear weapons will destroy Chinese industries. And also another very important decision Mao made, that is to inform the United States. Actually, this news where Soviet Union want to use nuclear weapons to China was released by the United States because Nixon want to improve the relations with China, want to withdraw the troops from Vietnam, because the Soviet Union also threat to United States, so-called the Sputnik movement. And then Mao talked to US through other, maybe Pakistan and other third parties. If the Soviet Union really want to use nuclear weapons to China, we have no choice. We should protect ourselves, but we cannot. We were warned to use nuclear weapons to the Americans' military bases in South Korea and Japan, and including Taiwan during that time. This, of course, is deterrence, and it makes the Americans immediately with the hotline to warn the Soviet Union leaders, you guys cannot drop the nuclear weapon to China, otherwise China will revenge to us, because our military bases is close to China, which Chinese nuclear weapons can attack. They cannot attack you, Moscow, but they can attack us. So Mao used the US to deter the Soviet Union not using nuclear weapons to China. Okay, that's Zheng Baodao, 1968 year story. To be frankly, why China worry about the Ukraine war is also because of the nuclear weapons. So China is the only country nuclear blackmailed by the Soviet Union. So we know this is very serious today in Ukraine. Okay, so the three roles that the Communist Party play a very important role. Independence, made the country independent from imperialist in the field, totally changed China's political system and atmosphere, and mobilized and educated the people, united the country, and also built the infrastructures, built the three lines of the industry systems. That's to summarize what the role for China can do is the party created the nation. The nation created the market. The market created the society. And then the society created a new civilization. Yeah. Today, we built more than 40,000 kilometers of high-speed railway. This high-speed railway costs lots of money. 1 kilometer, 200 million at the beginning. So 8 trillion yuan was invested in high-speed railway. But why China not suffer the debt trap? Because when you build two cities like Beijing to Tianjin, 150 kilometers of high-speed railway, and the government created the market. And then along the two cities, there are real estate, there are tourists and other industries. We say a cluster of the industries. So that's what we are doing in the Belt and Road Initiative. So China actually was very poor at the beginning, 1949, even 1978, before the opening and the reform. China's per capita GDP is only 1/3 of the South Sahara African countries' average, 1/3 of the per capita GDP. But now China's per capita GDP is nearly crossed the middle income trap. China's GDP is 70% of the United States. But China's per capita GDP 1/6, now 1/5 of the US. So we still have a long way to go, but have a huge potential. By 2035, China's per middle class from the current, we say 400 million, will be double, 800 million. So this is Chinese dream. So how can reach this Chinese dream without a strong leadership of the Communist Party to mobilize the people, educate the people, to unite the whole nation as the one family, and then to share the resources, comparative advantage, and independence, and they created the market. I don't think the Chinese modernization can be achieved. So that's my brief introduction on the China Communist Party's role in Chinese modernization. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It was very insightful. And since you mentioned PR, so would you like to highlight more what is the current status of BRI in developing digital and physical infrastructure in the world.
Okay, 10 years ago, President Xi initiated the Belt Road projects and programs. The reason is because of China as a world factory, but the Chinese market can only consume 30 to 40% of made in China. So 60 to 70% of made in China should sell outside of China. But the opening reforming, 1/3 goes to US, 1/3 goes to European market. But Europeans, the anti-dumping, anti-subsidies, and Americans now so-called decouple or de-risk. So we cannot buy so much made in China products. And then the middle class shrinking. So we need a new market. That's Africa, Asia, Latin America. So this is the Belt Road Initiative, new market. So this is for China's external market. And China during that time has more than $4 trillion of foreign reserve. According to the economist, 600 billion US dollars is enough. So majority of the Chinese foreign reserve should invest. And then the biggest one, infrastructure building, to share the China's open reform experience. If we want to get rich, build the road. If we want to get rich quickly, build the motor road. So that's reason the Belt Road Initiative focused on infrastructure building at the beginning. And then the economic corridors, cluster of industries, and thus help those countries leave the poverty and China funded the external market. So we said win-win cooperation. So that's at the beginning. After the second, the Belt Road Summit, which highlights the high quality, focus more on the green growth and green finance, green infrastructure building, and the sustainable. And not just the government funded, but the private companies, PPP model be highlighted. Now the third summit will be held in the middle of October this year. So the more focus on from the hard infrastructure building, the soft infrastructure or mutual connectivity to the people-to-people exchange. It's go more to digital and green transformation. So low carbon energy, low carbon transportation, low carbon housing infrastructure. This will be highlighted, and digital infrastructure and the rules, standards. This we say high quality of development will be priority. So that's basically the Belt Road Initiative in the past 10 years.
Thank you. And again, we were about to ask you that how China is analyzing the current behavior of Western power in their decoupling or de-risking from China. And we all know that it's both economies. The West need China and the China need the West because it's important for both tech giants and both powerhouses to do well so that the world is afloat. So did Chinese policies maker foresee that situation before? Did this that will happen in the future?
Okay, decouple, de-risk, major driving forces is the United States. Why? Because Americans, they're city upon the hill. They're chosen people. The dollar says, in God we trust. God bless America. So that Americans cannot accept that China will bypass the US in high technology, political system, ideology, civilization, whatever. So when Huawei, 5G take the leading role, the US bashed Huawei in the name of so-called national security. Actually, Huawei without a black door. So all the others, Americans, they have the black door, they can control the alliance. With the Huawei, they cannot control the alliance. So they claim the so-called national security. And then Americans enforce the allies, the US, Japan, South Korea, to so-called de-risk. Actually, it's de-China risk. And the slogan is today Ukraine, tomorrow Taiwan. The thing about Taiwan will be liberated by the Communist Party in a short term, maybe 2027, when the People's Liberation Army founded 100 years anniversary. So this is Chinese dream to unite the whole nation, of course, but not necessarily use the nuclear, not use military power. It's like an art of the Sun Tzu, of the war. Sun Tzu says, the best strategy is to win the war without fighting. So we have our wisdom and patience to solve our national unification problems, but not be used by the Americans to enforce the alliance to decouple or de-risk from the Chinese market. And then the German companies and the Western companies use the slogan with the in China, for China. It's just they invest in China is just for Chinese market, not for the whole market. The Americans also want to make India to replace China as a new water factory and the leader of the global south, and then want to not recognize China as the developing country anymore. The U.S. The Senate passed the bill. So that's the Americans' strategy. But the other Western countries also complain about China because China's technology and catch up with the West. The companies, they feel more competition from the Chinese companies. For instance, the Japanese car factories shrinking in Chinese profits market 24% in the first quarter of this year, because the Chinese electronic cars now is very advanced. So we are not, so much to want to buy the American Toyota or other cars. So that's reason also complain about China. And the Europeans identify China as the partner, competitor, and the rival, even strategic rival. And then be used by the Americans to so-called decouple, de-risk from China. But actually, the Chinese position as a water factory is division of labor, globalization. We really think globalization should continue and not be de-globalized. American strategy towards China is against the principles of the globalization and the market principle and the rules of economy. So finally, they're doomed to fail. But de facto, this happening decouple, de-risk in the high technology. But I don't think they can stop the rise of China, because China has the most completed industries of the clusters of the industries. So that's reason Americans' strategy seems the Trump administration, so-called the trade war, high technology war, now so-called decouple, not work so well. American chips and the semiconductor factories now lobby Washington to sell the high technology products to China. Otherwise, they lose the market. They don't have enough money for further innovation, because the American strategy against the market principles. So they suffered a lot from the bad China policy.
And what's your take on current BRICS summit which will happen? And as we are reading the news that more and more countries want to join BRICS and BRICS expansion. So do you see that more countries would join BRICS, and what is the probability of having our own BRICS currency?
I think de-dollarization is a trend. When the Americans sanctions to Russians, even seize the private property of Russians, right? And they kick off the Russians from the sweeping code system, which reminded the world that the US dollar hegemonic power is not public goods. Maybe it's a public bath. So Saudi and other, oil-rich countries, they want to hedge. So that reason asked China to make the reconsideration with Iran. They recently also held the Ukraine the conference, right, to want to solve this problem. So the Americans use more sanctions to Russia, and now more strategies contain China, make the world see that the Americans more subsidies. They are not interested of their pay high attention to other countries' interests, only pay their own interests. So that's, I think, not sustainable in this regard. So more countries want to join BRICS because they want to, they do not want to take side between US or Russia, or between the West and China. So they want to more have independent voice. So that's the reason BRICS is more attractive, I think, to hedging the dollar hegemonic system.
We are also reading the and news and that keep India and Brazil are not too interested in having the expansion of BRICS, and they want to have a proper system to let the other members join the group. So how long do you see that we see the expansion of BRICS? And because we can see this, all the party members are not on the same page.
Indeed, there's challenges for the BRICS development. The first challenge, of course, is China-India with a rival confrontation competition. India, under the Modi's leadership, they also seek the industrialization. So they put China as a target, even as a reference. And they learn China, but then bash China. And Americans also support India to replace China as a new water factory, as I mentioned. Second, the Europeans also consider about the new multipolar system is coming. The US transatlantic is one polo. China and Russia is another polo. The global south is another polo. So this is so-called a multipolar system. And then make China and Russia devoiced with BRICS in a name, maybe follow the pattern of or paradigm of the US saying about democracy or autocracy. So BRICS was actually divided by the West, want to divide the BRICS. But China and India, of course, they have the competition rival in industrialization. However, they have the common grounds for to improve the emerging economies' power in the global governance. They also have their coherent policies in Ukraine. China and Russia and India, actually, we used to have the trilateral strategic dialogue mechanism before. We want to resume that kind of dialogue. Brazil and South Africa, they also will be not just follow the West, they are more independent. Now Turkey, Indonesia, Saudi, even Iran, they want to join BRICS. Even some of them want to join SCO. That means we regret disappoint from the Western dominant international order, or the Americans so-called the rule-based international order. They really think about the share, the common grounds and interests and missions with China and other BRICS countries. We need to reform the international system and order, make it more inclusive, balanced, open, and more healthy, sustainable.
Thank you. And what I mean, I would like to hear more about, is there any possible, because most of the people who are, let's say, more prone to China, they want to have a common currency. So what's the likelihood of having would China allow to have a common currency, because they will also use yuan as their own currency? So do we see something similar? Because India, as you said, has their own interest, and rightly so. And so do we see this kind of probability of having a common currency in future?
Okay, firstly, as I mentioned, the dollarization is a global trend. Not just China, India, Russia, even the Eurozone, Saudi and the OPEC, the thing about the US dollar system is declining. Americans abuse the rights of the long arm justification and the sanctions and print too much US dollars, right? And then everybody suffered. Huawei was suffered because they have the business with Iran. So this is unfair for them. Second, no single sovereign currency can replace US dollar as a new hegemonic currency. We don't think so. No one can do that, either RMB or Euro or Japanese yen or anybody. Thirdly, maybe we need a new kind of a blanket of currencies system of the post-Bretton Woods system, maybe, or digital currency to hedging Americans' dollar system or substitutes to that kind of system, or global regionalization, localization, not just globalization in a currency era as well. So China, of course, support BRICS, maybe have a common currency system. Now the new development bank, which also located in Shanghai, maybe help to that kind of direction, which I think is just at the beginning. Of course, it's a long way to go to hedging the dollar system risk, but we need this kind of collaboration. OPEC now also think about the dollarized that kind of new mechanism. And Russia definitely is doing so, and the BRI, the Belt Initiative, also help the internationalization of RMB and also digitalization currency, maybe laboratory.
Okay. And since you mentioned Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I just would like to add, Shahid, that I completely agree with Dr. Wang. Also regarding digital currencies, right? Brazil just announced, I think a few days ago, that the government is going to launch soon the DEX, which will be the Brazilian digital currency. And perhaps other countries within the BRICS, they can also trade on their own currency, especially in the digital currency. So it's not to create maybe a unique currency among the BRICS countries, but also to trade in their own currencies, which is already happening, but also to start using digital currency to trade. So I think this is going to be a new trend in within the BRICS.
Thanks for that. And I was about to ask Dr. Wang, since I'm here in the Middle East, how important Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and other countries are for China in terms of strengthening not only a trade relationship, okay, but the strategic relationship between the two blocks, you can say. And we have seen some great news 2-3 months back when China brokered the peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That was nobody was expecting, but it really happened. So how important is this reason for China?
Personally, I think many countries seek strategic autonomy, not just France, in general, European Union, as I said, Saudi and Iran, because alliance system is not equal. For instance, Japan, South Korea, even in general, NATO countries, too much rely on the Americans' military protection, a nuclear umbrella. They are not independent militarily, industrially, foreign policy. So more countries actually want to more independence. And the US, the alliances is not equal, as I said. It's exclusive. It's not inclusive. It's make the tech side. It's not good for them. Secondly, Saudi and Iran, all those countries actually is a rich oil countries. Today, the neutrality of the CO2 emission, low carbon technology, and the rules is a huge pressure for them. So Saudi, Iran, all those countries ask China to cooperate because China is transforming very dramatically from the traditional industrial to low carbon. China put forward the carbon neutrality and the carbon peak 2030 and 2060. So it's huge, tremendous achievements for China. So they need to cooperate with China, like electronic cars, all this, and the new energy, the nuclear powers, and all those new innovations. But US not helps them. US and the Saudi, they compete each other to sell oil to the outside world. And so science and technology, new innovation, low carbon, digital, all this, we would like to cooperate with China, including in the BRICS and other countries need to transfer. And thirdly, I think they need, peace and stable environment. The competition, wars, the conflicts suffered a lot for them. For instance, Iran and Saudi, they're brothers under the Muslim, Sunni, and shared. Not the two countries, the two worlds under the Muslim. They need to unite it, mutually connected. So China has a Belt and Road Initiative which contributes to the mutual connectivity. We think that's very important. So the more and more countries are actually encouraged by the reconciliation of Iran and Saudi. Even Israel, the Prime Minister Netanyahu is visiting China actually because of the domestic strike as a postponed the trip. So also how China can make the compromise between Israel and Arab countries. So that's, I think, a huge achievement we can expect, that we both have good relations with Israel and the Muslim world, particularly with Arabic world, Arab League. So we really want to contribute to peace and stability. Actually, Americans opposite sometimes the divide and rule and make war and thing, it's totally, I think, different philosophy and strategy with China.
Thank you. And since you mentioned climate, climate change is actually the real problem the world is facing. The real problem, actually, if you see the whole world is facing climate change. And I have written about this, that China is important and critical to transfer the technology to the emerging markets, those who don't have, all from the Africa, Latin American countries. So how do you see that, how China is contributing to control damages by, let's say, human man-made catastrophe and climate change? At the same time, do we see any exclusive initiative from China to control climate change? Exclusive meaning, which is something for like BRI we have seen. Exclusive something for China only, that which China is trying to help the emerging market because they need the money, they need the investment, they need the technology.
Yes, I think firstly, Chinese understanding of the climate change, I think it's maybe we learn from the West, of course, but even go further with the West because we understand from the civilization meaning. If you read the Chinese classic Yi Jin, the thing about any civilization should adapt to the new environment. Mm-hmm. So industrialization now transfer to the digitalization, ecology civilization. So that President Xi put forward his thought. So that's very important. China, if you visit Beijing, now the air quality much, much better than before, 10 years actually, because this is very neat for us. Before we think about this conspiracy from the West, want to slow down China's economic growth. But now we think about now it's a better life or better quality of the living condition. It's our Chinese dream. And then secondly, also is from the Chinese civilization. Transformation. It's not just either or. It's coordinate. One good example is in Serbia. There's a steel companies which has more than 1,000 workers because Serbia applied to join the European Union. So they need close this factory, but lots of the 1,000 people will be fired. And the local government will be suffered a lot. And then as China and Hebei, the steel companies actually help them to transfer, notify any workers, just transfer from the low carbon, from the traditional steel to the low carbon. Because in China, we are successfully in doing so. So they kept this factory and then transfer to the low carbon. Notify any workers, and then tax also increase. So it's very important. The transformation is not just close the factory and then fire the workers. It's no quicker solution. So I think that's also the very important for China experience. And thirdly, why China can say so in doing so, because we say Communist Party highlights the principles of the people-centric. So every achievement should benefit the whole people. So today, not whole Chinese people, but whole the world people. So that reason we initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, because the 70%, 80% more than people live in the developing countries. So we need to work for them, not just work for the rich people. Before, the made in China is sells to the rich people's market, right? Americans and the European market. So now I think the BRICS and other emerging countries really want to share the technology and experience and the transformation of that from China. So that's the reason we initiative in the BRICS Xiamen Summit. So about a new industrial partnership. They have the institute of the academic research and also working all this arrangement to contribute jointly with the other BRICS countries of the new industrialization partnership. I think the BRICS countries should give a new type of the industrialization, not polluted first and then clean. It's cost of lots of money. So now we have many projects and programs under the Belt and Road Initiative and the BRICS and the new development banks, how to transfer from the traditional industry to the low carbon. So many, including in IPR transfer.
Thank you. And since we are from business world, I have question from our colleagues that if we for outsiders, that meaning that we people who are outside China, are very eager to understand how China balance between public and private entities. Okay, meaning what the policy makers think that when they have to not let the company go so bigger that they have an influence like the Western countries.
That's a very important question. As I mentioned, the Communist Party's role in the Chinese modernization is united the whole nation, including the Chinese lands, all owned by the government, not the private. Yeah. So any housing apartment built in China, we can live there, but only for 70 years of their rights to live there. The land, including the resources like the oil, gold, everything, is owned by the government. So that's the reason we are very efficient in the past 10 years, built more than 40,000 kilometers of high-speed railway. For the US, because of the private land, private companies, and the interest groups, now zero in high-speed railway built in US. Mm-hmm. That's very important because Chinese philosophers think about the people, all the life, even including animals, can enjoy the sunshine and the prosperity of the. This is a gift of the earth, of the environment. Either private or public, all these human beings, people first, I think. And then at the beginning, public play a very important role as state-owned enterprises to build the satellite, to build the infrastructure, for industrialization, which make China more independent, because China during that time of the sanctions by Soviet Union and the United States, the West, as I mentioned to you. But the state-owned enterprises, the public, the problem is not so much efficiency. The Western of the resources, the people work there and then pay the same salary, or they are not so much, they suffered a lot. So that's the reason 1978 in Fengyang, it's a very poor area of Anhui province, 18 farmers secretly signed the contract to want to let the land, we say, as I mentioned, the land owned by the government. So people without enough of the passion to work. Then they want to rent the land from the government. And then finally, the government agreed then to do, and then as a laboratory and promoted in other regions. So that's the beginning of the Chinese opening reform in the rural areas, in the countryside. Later, when more and more roads built, and then companies in the coastal area, particularly in like Zhejiang and Jiangsu, or those, the people get rich and have money and then invest. So private companies also growing, and the government issued many laws and bills to protect their rights. And then, particularly after China joined the WTO, should protect the IPR and also private property rights. And then we have the law. And then gradually, the public and the private combine together, coordinate together, contribute Chinese economic growth. Until now, there's a phenomenon of the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5, more than half of the Chinese GDP contributed by the private companies. more than 60% of their income tax comes from the private companies. The 70% more than their profits contributed by the private companies, and 80% of their hire workers contributed by the private companies. 90% of the incomes in the local company contributed by the private companies. So private companies contribute the most majority of the Chinese economic, in the GDP, in the tax, in the income, in the hire the people, all this. So now China is not the traditional socialist economy anymore. So it's a socialist market economy. So that's reason. So either public or the private all contribute to the national development, and the people benefit the majority of the people, whole people.
Okay. The critics might say that you mentioned that China is able to have more high-speed railroads because of the government policies, but your neighbor Japan has two the high-speed railroads, and they are not the same way of doing. Let's say they are not same political system. So how we can see the value proposition that if we take the example of high-speed railroads only. So Japan is doing also great in terms, not as good as China, but they also have their own vast ecosystem of high-speed railroads. So how you will justify that?
Okay, as I mentioned, firstly, China is big, united under the leadership of Communist Party. We have 1.4 billion people, 400 million middle class, and educated people. This year, more than 12 million students graduate from the universities. So every year, China produces new engineering. It's Indians, Germans, Japan, Americans combined together. Educated people, engineering. So that's a huge contribution, which in that high-speed railway, they need, united the country, right? So we built the whole country from this province across this, because of the land owned by the government and the engineering, and they invest a lot. Japan, we learn from Japan, France, Germany, and Canada, the high-speed railway. But we go beyond just learning from one single model. We learn from everyone, and then combine together, and then invest to surpass any single competitor like Japan and Germany. Why we do that? Because as I mentioned to you, is our civilization, Yi Jin says, is a coordination, combination, learn from everywhere, not just learn from one. So that's very important. So because every high-speed companies from Japan, Canada, and France and Germany, they all want to win the huge market in China. So everybody compete each other, and the Chinese government took full use of this competition, and then to buy all the IPR from them. During that time, after the global financial crisis, the government invest $4 trillion so to stimulate the market. And then the local government even double. So during that time, the Chinese leaders use the loss of those monies to build the high-speed railway, to buy the IPRs from all the four high advantage companies. And then we build our this system. Japan actually too small market. When their external market was completed by China, and then the engineers and the workers will be fired because without enough opportunities to work. So that's the reason why China needs BRI. Otherwise, we also was repeated the tragedy with Japan. So everything because China is big. Everything because China is big and united by the Communist Party. Everything because of the land owned by the government. So the opening and reform, the local government just rented the land to the state to the transnational companies, and then they make huge money, invest. So poor country, why get rich very quickly? Land.
Thank you. And I would have asked you the last question, and then Dr. Hinata, you can have your own take. How do you see China after, let's say, a decade after? How do you see China after a decade, after 10 years?
Okay, after 10 years, I'm sure China will be #1 economy in the world. China's per capita GDP will reach Americans maybe 1/3 or some around. China will be the rich country. China will be a high technology country. China will be united, but China still, we say, on the side of the developing country, because the P5 country, China vote for developing country interests, not just for China's own interests. For instance, in the past years, we used 16 times of veto power in the UN, 8 times for Syria. Can you imagine? Okay, so that's, I think it's China. And China still Asian civilization, socialist country, developing country, and I think peace love country.
Thank you. Dr. Nata, would you like to ask anything?
Actually, I would like to share my personal experience of a foreigner living in China for almost 2 decades. So I have seen much of this transformation since in the early 2000s until now. And you mentioned about pollution, right? I have lived in Beijing. I actually attended Renmin University, where you teach also, and the Tsinghua University, and then Jiaotong. These are all of the main schools, right, in China. And I think the Beijing Olympics was really the game changer for China to really show the China to the world, right? To welcome more foreigners, to attract more investments. I saw also transformations in terms of innovation, investment, and many more foreigners going to China since then. So yeah, I do agree with you in terms of China, the role of the political party to really draft a right path on where China needs to go, and is starting tackling issues such as innovation, technology, science, as well as climate change. Right, so it's not only about economic development. Right now, it's much more than that. It's about how we can develop new sustainable development ways, and not only for China, like you said, also to help developing countries. So being also Latin American, I really see the importance of China to develop the economies in Latin America or in Africa, for example, and take this leadership in the global South. However, on the other hand, you do have other European powers, or you do have the US, who are not really pleased about China's rise, right? So just to counterbalance, I do believe that, yes, there is obviously competition, but a lot of room also to establish partnerships, perhaps between China, the US, and Europe. Why not? So what are your views on how maybe these, regions, especially North America, Europe, and China, can have a common ground and enhance cooperation for a better world?
Very good question. I think, firstly, I think China, United States and Europe, they views China differently. There's a saying, the Americans does not like China as it is. Europeans does not like China as it does. So, as I mentioned to you, China exists, a growing challenge to Americans' identity as a chosen people. God bless. But Europeans not views that way, right? The Europeans can accept rise of China because U.S. seek hegemony, Europe not. U.S. Religion thinking, Europeans not. U.S. that has a military alliance system, the Europeans is not. So Ukraine war is more NATO and the Russia conflict. It's not the European Union with Russia, right? So that's very clearly. In this regard, we pay high attention to the relations with the European Union. My previous background actually is American studies, Fudan University for 8 years. And then because of working in Brussels, 3 years as a diplomat to the European Union. So now I'll be the Jean Monnet Chair Professor at the Renmin University, from Fudan, Shanghai to Beijing and Renmin. So that's my background transformation. I pay more attention to Europe civilization and normative power, or this Okay, but of course, we U.S. and Europe share common grounds. Firstly, there feel more competition from China as a high technology norms and also universal values challenged by China. But China said the common values for whole human being, universal values is just one of them. It's not just a competitor or zero-sum game of that, because universal values is one God thinking. China is we have three gods. It's not one God. So that's a different, some different maybe misperceptions between each other. Now, secondly, Europeans actually, to be frankly, not too much independence from the US. For instance, 90% of the data in Europe, which owned by the American private companies, because you don't have the independent search engine, like you use Google, right? So that's reason France actually cut the network, the internet, and then the violence stopped, last month. So behind these Americans, private companies want to teach a lesson to Macron, because Macron visit China and say many bad things which Americans does not like, and that not follow Americans in the Taiwan issue, seek more strategic autonomy, which everybody knows about that, including your nation and Germany. The North Pole, Nord Stream second was explored. Everybody knows this is maybe US behind to cut the energy linkage with Russia and then industrial transfer to the United States. So China really support the strategic autonomy for the European Union, multipolar world. Otherwise, the Americans abuse the power. So we are not against Americans, actually. We would like to remind Americans, actually, like we used the veto power 8 times in Syria. And now the Americans appreciate China now. They said, thank you, China. Otherwise, if you are not used veto power, Americans will be following the trap in Syria after Afghanistan, Iraq. So China actually is reminding the world and the US, not abuse your power. The world needs actually multipolar and justice balance. So we really want to hope to work with the US and Europe, including the Belt and Road Initiative. Recently, the Borrelli, the external service chief, right, the European Union, said there's a ready help to have synergy of the strategies between the European Union's global gateway strategy with the Belt and Road Initiative. Today, I published an article in the Global Times to welcome that, to how to implement. So the US, actually, the many companies also earns huge money under the Belt and Road projects, like the McKinsey, the consulting, and the software. China's companies just earn money from hardware. So actually, they coordinate. But the American politicians and the government just blame China for domestic purpose, because the polarized, the way divided the U.S. politics. So just use competition with who is more bash to China and then win the heart. So actually, cannot solve the problem of Americans, like the gun violence, like the debts, like huge problems for Americans. Actually, they need to collaborate with China, like climate change. And so Europeans actually, we think about, we hope, and we are ready to work more closely towards the digital and green transformation for each other, because China is not just the water factory, but now it's also water market. So we cut the CO2 emission, not just from the way of producing, but a way of living and housing, transportation, but even way of thinking. So it's more comprehensive, and even from the central government, the local government, it's more strict. So maybe we can achieve our goals maybe ahead of time than Europe. Even European Union is more ambitious at the beginning, but now I think suffered from the Ukraine war, from the inflation, energy crisis, and many domestic challenges like France. So I think China and Europe really need to collaborate to avoid so-called special rival or competition, seek more opportunities for collaboration.
Thank you, Dr. Renata. Thank you, Professor. And we hope that we see more collaboration between the West and China, and they all come to a single platform that we are working for the better of the world. And until next time, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Dr. Wang.
Bye-bye. Best wishes. Welcome back.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.